Ukrainian claims that they have destroyed a full brigade of the Russian VDV, of the elite air assault units in Vovchansk, while we have numbers how many planes the Ukrainians claim to have damaged and destroyed in the first 6 months of the war. We also talk about the developments along the front line, political events, and troop generations by both sides, including international support, in this situation report about the war in Ukraine. Ukraine says they have taken down more than 30 Russian planes in the first 6 months of this war. 9 Sukhoi 25, that's the close air support. 1 Sukhoi 57, that's the new stealth fighter. 2 MiG-31, that's the supersonic heavy interceptor that is being used to launch Kinzhal as well. 13 Sukhoi 34, that's the fighter bomber, probably an equivalent to the Strike Eagle that is mostly being used to launch glide bombs. 2 Sukhoi 35, their most modern version of the Tu-27 family in air superiority fighter. 2 A-50, those are the equivalent to the AVAX system. 1 Ilyushin 22M 11, that's a communication and electronic signal plane, and 1 Tupolev 22 M3, that would be one of their strategic bombers. We have to say though that the full numbers are nowhere close to being proven. Now we have numbers, we have, for instance, the A-50 are confirmed, the Sukhoi 57 damaged is confirmed. We have a number of these claims to be confirmed, but for instance, the shot down Sukhoi 34 and the shot down Sukhoi 25, not even close are we in the proof we don't have proof, visual proof, that those shot downs actually happened, which doesn't mean they are necessarily wrong. It just means we can't prove it. So let's switch over to the events along the front line. And here the Ukrainians mentioned that there was an attempt of the Russians to cross the border with sabotage and reconnaissance troops in the area here of Sonitsky, I think. Sontintisky Kosachok. I tried to pronounce it right. I even practiced it before that, but unfortunately the time between practicing and pronouncing it was a little too long. So Sotnich, I'll give it up. I better give it up. I'm sorry for butchering once again a name. So the Russians tried to cross over here. The Ukrainians said they managed to defeat it. They managed to push them back. And now the situation is clear again. Zelensky previously said that 90 kilometers northwest of Kharkiv, the Russians are concentrating troops. That should probably be in this area, as Kharkiv is down here. And this is more or less the distance that he claimed. So the Russians are concentrating troops here. But this so far might have been reconnaissance in force or something like this, but at least it's not a full invasion at this point as of yet. Other than that, in the western part, I have no news whatsoever, and in the eastern part, we have from Vovchansk, we have messages. First of all, a Russian mill blogger said that the Ukrainians have been successful, but in general, the line is dynamic since some houses are behind us, some are behind the enemy. So he's still confirming that things like this might still be a reality, that the Ukrainians might still have cut off some. But as said, so far, we do not see much proof of troops capitulating from either side here that would be expected if some kind of cauldron had been built here. But at the same time, we see that the Ukrainians have been somewhat successful in the southern part of Vovchansk, and that's interesting because this is the factory where they were supposed to be. We've seen them recently up here and somewhere in this direction, but now we have them here in the western part. That was in Russian hands for quite a long time. The Ukrainians are now here as well. So in the last situation report, we had them here. Now we have them here. If the Russians are still in here, they might actually definitely be cut off by now, as said, if they are still in there. That's it from this area of the front line. We switch to the eastern part, and here the Ukrainians have lost a sizable portion in the area of Nevske. This is down here. Here they lost roughly this area here, a width of 4.85 kilometers and a depth of 1.2 kilometers. The Russians were managed to advance. At the same time, the Ukrainians managed to throw back the Russians east of Terny. Here we have geolocations of the pictures here in the north, and we have a second one of it in the south. Some of it, at least I have fresh geolocation, these and these. The southern part here, I have not seen a geolocation yet. That might be fantasy. That might just mean that I haven't seen the visual proof that exists. Further south, we have the claims that the Ukrainians also gained significant portions here in the Serebryansk forest. I still have to see a visual evidence. I have not seen any in here. I have seen Ukrainians up here in this area, also just more or less in the southeastern part of the claimed territory, but here at least I can confirm that the Ukrainians advanced. About here I unfortunately have not seen any proof of this. South of the Seversky Donetsk in Bilohorivka we have a Russian advance. Here the Russians managed to advance somewhat further into the area that is more or less gray zone. They should have that's probably in here. So in total, they advanced roughly 500 meters. No big change overall, though. Further south, the Russians are claiming that they have taken Rostolivka. I have yet to see visual evidence. We had them up here, we had them here, and we had them somewhere here in the east. So probably half of the town should be in Russian hands. That much seems to be more or less certain. But whether whole Rostolivka has fallen, at least I have not seen evidence to support that claim. Closer to Chasiv Yar, we have changes. The Russians have advanced in the east, in the north of Chasiv Yar, and here this is quite a change, as we have them right here, actually. So far we had them here. They are now here where the canal is underground, is in pipes. They have been visually confirmed. Russians have been visually confirmed in this area, so probably all of this here should now be in Russian hand. Hence an advance that keeps the pressure up and increases the pressure on the northern part of Vovchansk. In Vovchansk itself, we have the spokesperson for the Khortysia group, Lieutenant Colonel Voloshin. He said the Ukrainians pushed the Russians mostly out of the canal district. We had visual evidence that the Russians bombarded this area, which would support this claim, but the fresh geolocations do not. We have a fresh Russian advance in the north that is showing them here in the northern part of the town. That's here. And we have a second one in the south where they are here. So here. That the Ukrainians control this while the Russians control this is theoretically possible, but seems fairly unlikely. So the Russians have visually been confirmed here, I think roughly here, and here we only have seen videos of attacks on this area. That might even have been a Ukrainian attack for all we know, so that the eastern part of the town, of the quarter of Chasiv Yar, of the canal district, is liberated again seems highly unlikely to me when I look at the visual evidence that I have seen. Further south, we have another change, and here the Russians managed to increase their control over the area in the rough Mayorsk area here. The Russians now have taken roughly this area after capturing Shumi. They have advanced in the south here as well. Further south at Avdiivka we have changes as well. The Russians managed to solidify their control over Sokil. Roughly this area now fell under Russian control. Further south they have taken more or less this area between Umanske and Novopokrovske. Here they managed to push the Ukrainians out of several of the tree lines. That was to be expected with them controlling the north and the south. The Ukrainians were likely to slowly withdraw from this area. South of it, in Yasnobrodivka, we have another small advance of the Russians until here. This is showing them, this is here. We have them here and they are at this point now. We have already had visual evidence of them here, so not a significant change. And this time again they were attacked, so it's not proven that they actually control this area. We just see them pushing in, continuing pushing towards Yasno-Brodivka and being at least partially successful. Further south at Krasnohorivka, we have a change in the southwest of Krasnohorivka, and here the Russians are now at the western part of it. This is here, roughly here. So they're advancing in this area as well, increasing their control over the southwestern part where Ukrainian presence still has been. This is still being considered a gray zone by the pro-Ukrainian deep state map. I have seen Russians in there though, and I have seen Russian presence in that tree line. So the front line is probably more like this here right now. But as I said, the map here shows it different, but I think the control in the south of Krasnohorivka is consolidated as of now. Further south at Konstantinivka, we have a Russian advance, very minor. They already were on the outskirts of Paraskovivka, and they had recently taken Novomikhailivka or a couple of weeks ago, and now we have them advancing a little closer towards Konstantinivka. Here they have reached this outermost portion, which is more or less here. So the gray zone is probably in the outermost houses of Konstantinivka by now. Further south, we have no changes that I can confirm in this area here. Also from the oblast border, nothing I can see that has changed. And in the eastern part of the area south of Orikhiv, we have a fresh Russian attack that has reached roughly until here. We have visual evidence of this as well. And it is here where the Russians were attacked. The Ukrainians say they were defeated and pushed back. So if we believe the Ukrainians, then the front line is unchanged, but we at least have visual evidence of the Russians reaching this point. From the Crimean Peninsula, the occupation administration is now reacting to the casualties, the civilian casualties in the recent attacks, and here the occupation government says they introduce a new warning system that will give the population more time to seek shelters, and they are going to build at least 600 shelters on the beaches, so beachgoers have a place to flee in case of an attack. At the same time, the guests on the beaches are being said to please stay away until these shelters are being built. But from what I've seen, there is no general ban, so on their own accord, I guess they can still go to the beach. Overall, there is the news from today. I took it. We have here Forbes, David X writing, the Russians may have lost an entire airborne brigade in Vovchansk. He is referencing this Ukrainian correspondent. He's claiming, among others, that they had heavy losses and 500 is deserters. So that that basically the unit was destroyed and the rest ran away because of their heavy losses. And this is supposedly an elite force. The bad news for the Ukrainian side is that Kriegsforscher, who is a Ukrainian soldier fighting in a Ukrainian officer fighting in Vovchansk, writing some kind of alternative reality. So if we want to believe the Ukrainian hurrah propaganda, then of course a whole Russian brigade has been destroyed over the past couple weeks. But if we believe an officer right in the place at the situation, he says it's a different fantasy what they are talking about. So he obviously cannot observe a destruction of a full brigade. Troop generation in Russia, we have news. Putin has signed a law according to which soldiers and policemen that are retired continue receiving their pension next to their wage as a soldier if they sign up voluntarily. So obviously to entice retired people to sign up voluntarily. And when it comes to North Korean troops and troop deployment in Ukraine or in the war in Ukraine, so far it's still not confirmed. The story is going back to a South Korean TV station who claimed that the North Koreans said that, according to members of the South Korean government. But as of now, I have not seen any concrete evidence that proves it. Last time I showed you the press conference in the Pentagon where the general that was asked said we are going to keep an eye on it. He didn't deny it, but I explicitly emphasized that he also didn't confirm it. So it's a real possibility, but not set in stone yet. We'll have to see if they pop up at the same time. So as said last time, it can happen. It might be possible that the deployment of North Korean troops comes, but it isn't automatic. It isn't proven. A Russian opposition channel, opposition research channel, has said they can confirm at least 71,000 fallen Russians in 22 and 23. They simply took official statistics and calculated the reported male death to the usual numbers, so they come that at least 71,000 have died additionally to what was to be expected over the last in the first 2 years of the war. In political spheres, Sri Lanka is still talking to Russia, and now apparently they demand financial compensation for wounded and killed members of citizens that have fought for the Russian armed forces. 17 are reported to have died for the Russian armed forces, and a quite impressive number of 800 to 2,000 are currently participating in the war. Now we are obviously talking about battalion to almost brigade size. This would be a significant recruitment achievement by the Russians to have other people, other nations, other citizens fight for them in this regard. But Sri Lanka is unhappy about this, and apparently they have enough leeway with the Russians that, from what is being read, Lavrov agreed that they will no longer recruit the Sri Lankans. And right now the negotiations are to allow them to leave their contracts early, because obviously the Russians can claim that they signed contracts and thus they can't just simply send them home. And we have very unpleasant news. This is a picture of the Ukrainian prisoners of war that were recently exchanged. We talked about this in the past, and as you can see, they are not quite, let's put it this way, they are very skinny. There are countless examples. Basically no prisoner arrives other than this, and a lot of them, I don't want to show you the pictures now because YouTube is very sensitive. One of those pictures also shows wounds that haven't properly healed, that weren't properly treated. And of course, the Geneva Convention is fairly clear. The detaining power shall supply prisoners of war who are being evacuated with sufficient food and potable water and with the necessary clothing and medical attention. The Geneva Convention says it fairly clearly in the Article 20, as you can see here in the Part 1 General Provisions. No, it's the Geneva Convention relative to the treatment of prisoners of war. It leaves no doubt how prisoners of war are being treated, and signs are coming every time. We had them with the prisoners that were released from the fighting of Mariupol as well, where some had broken limbs which weren't fixed, so they healed together in weird angles. We have every single one being released close to starvation. We have medical mistreatment. Now the recent claim is that here the corpse of a prisoner who was in their care and that was captured by the Russians 2 years ago, his corpse was being delivered, showing massive mistreatment, disaligned nose, fingernails missing, broken fingers, broken bones. So clear signs of mistreatment by the Russians here. What's the point of this? I cannot tell you. I can just document it, that from what I've seen, there is conclusive evidence that Russia does not treat its captives as it's supposed to be by the Geneva Convention. In international support, Lithuania and Estonia have declared they are going to give 0.25% of their GDP for the Ukrainian effort for the next few years. This is obviously for the two small countries itself. In total, it's not much, but should the whole West follow, that would be a game changer in financial terms. So I guess the two march ahead and hope that the rest will follow. Thales or Thales in France is starting to work with Ukraine in the areas of electronic warfare, communication, air defense, and radar. So another top-notch Western company starting to do cooperations with the Ukrainians. Northrop Grumman wants to increase the production for medium caliber in Ukraine even. For Ukraine, I'm sorry. And the production of 155 shells and tank ammunition is to be increased as well. Rochelle, the company from Canada that is producing the Senator APC, is planning now to create a factory in Ukraine to build them there as well. Another attempt to improve Ukraine's situation when it comes to material. 50 ground crew for the F-16 have now finished their training in Denmark, and after a summer break, the next 50 will start their training there. So the next steps come towards the usage of F-16. Obviously, there are also already claims that the first usage of F-16 has begun, but we had that claim half a year ago, and I have not seen any proof whatsoever that F-16s have entered the fight. I guess we'll find out soon enough, and at one of these days, those rumors will be true, but not necessarily today. And finally, of course, I made a video about it 2 days ago. There's currently a negotiation with Israel, between the US and Israel, to hand over up to eight of its Patriot systems to Ukraine, as Israel wants to decommission those Patriot systems, and that would mean a massive boost of the Ukrainian air defense, especially as those launchers would obviously come with the whole stock of the Israeli missiles. So that should help Ukraine seriously in improving its air defense. I made a separate video about it. I'm going to link it to you on the eye or in the description. But that's it from me for now already. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps with the algorithm. Leave a comment what you think about the current developments and the destruction of the VDV Brigade. If you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. And this channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you want to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. Thank you very much to everyone already supporting this channel. That's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.